The only form of gambling I'd say that I ever really didn't participate in was slot machines and scratch tickets.
Oh, okay.
Those people were always on a lower form of, I don't know if you understand this, but there was a hierarchy.
Yeah. Yeah, like poker players and then racetracks, and then there's like
Oh yeah,
the
right. So I
average
was
Joes that
smart.
buy scratch tickets.
Yeah, smart. Don't you understand how intellectual I was? I was
Yeah.
on the. I was the elite. I was in the thinking person's games.
You were like Rain Man coming into there.
Yes, the games we played, you had to think through. You had to be smart to play. You couldn't just scratch. Yes, I was in the. Like it's funny. It's like the dumbest guys in the rooms are always the happiest, right?
Yeah.
And why is that? There's a correlation between, I try, and that it's humility. I try to stay dumb and curious, and to the degree that I do, my life's been.
Yeah.
This is Rock Bottom with Ryan. No sugarcoating, no filters. The pain, the chaos, the truth. No bullshit. Just recovery.
All right, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom with Ryan. I'm here today with Jay Sapovits. Jay, how you doing, man?
Yeah, good to talk to you, Ryan.
Good to have you on. So as you know, we talk a lot about recovery on this podcast. And one of my first questions for you, I know you have a lot of entrepreneurial things that you've accomplished, and we'll talk about that later. But first and foremost, do you have a sober date? If so, when is that? And what were your drink or drug of choice or addiction of choice? And where are you from? All that stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I made I've actually gotten clean and sober a few different times. I made my last bet March 6, 1997. Went to my first GA meeting, Gamblers Anonymous, on March 10th of 1997. And I've remained continuous in that sobriety since that date. Having not made a bet, participated in a raffle, scratched a card, any of that nonsense.
Almost 30 years.
Then almost 30 years, yeah, over 10,000 days for sure. And then really recommitted to my recovery on February 29th, 2016, when I gave up all drinking, drugs, or any mind-altering substances. Part of the reason I did that was because I had a great run when I first got clean and sober. I really wasn't a drinker or a drugger. I was a gambler, right? Growing up, and that was my drug of choice. And I had a great entrepreneurial and business run for 8-9 years. And I know this is going to come as a surprise to you as a fellow addict, but I got consumed with ego.
Yeah.
And my ego overtook me, and I had some failures. And as I had this incredible straight line up my whole life, and then went, people talk about the roller coaster. I didn't have a roller coaster. I had to climb straight up, and then I fell down off a cliff. And had to pick myself back up and climb back up that cliff. And it just got to the point where it had to, something had to give. And that's what ended up being what it was.
Okay. I'm sure that was very humbling in the moment when you're used to just consistent success, and then finally just everything drops off a cliff like that. I'm sure it really forced you to have to learn a lot about yourself and put the ego aside and have to start from square one, all that stuff.
Yeah, you say humbling in the moment. I needed to be humbled, and it was like I couldn't fail, and I walked on water, and I was the center of my universe. All things that are antithetical to actually being deeply recovered, which I at one point early in my recovery was from gambling. And hadn't even, I used to sit in Gamblers Anonymous meetings, and I'd see guys come in from AA, and I'd be like, what are you doing? Like, you knew that addiction existed, and now you've come and gotten yourself involved in something else. Yeah. And lo and behold, I became one of those guys.
Okay. Well, let's hear a little bit more about like what was like in the early days, and we'll look it up to a little bit more about that. What was it like growing up? What was like your family dynamic like prior to getting into business and all that stuff, prior to gambling? Like, what was life like as a kid?
Yeah, so it was all I knew. So for me, it was the perfect childhood, but it involved, being my dad's total along and his little buddy. And, I was one of two. and I was the youngest by 6 years. Mom, very dominant in the household, really ran it with an iron fist. But my dad's major hobby was, he was into sports, but he was into the racetrack. So when I was with my dad, we were either at the racetrack or I was following him on one of his pursuits, which he was a high school baseball coach. He was a public address announcer at Widener College, Chester High School, outside of Philadelphia. And I was always with him. It was, whether we were, and when I say he liked going to the track, I mean, he was a 5-6 day a week at the track type of guy.
Really?
We were close to Brandywine racetracks when they were open, which was, roughly April through September. He, was every night. So they were open 6 nights a week. Monday was the worst night of the week because they weren't. And that's how I grew up. And I didn't make a bet until I was 13 years old because I just didn't even think of betting. I was just with my dad. But, then I got tied up with guys that were 13, 14 years old that did want to bet. And then the next thing you know, I was in it, and you can imagine how that spiraled for someone who's got an addictive personality, which is betting every game on the college card with my buddies, going to the racetrack, poker games, card games, constant action from the time I woke up until the time that I went to sleep from age 13 until I finally quit, which I was 24.
Wow. And so you consider yourself kind of an adrenaline junkie? You like the excitement that you got from placing bets, winning bets, the anticipation of possibly winning? Were all those a factor?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a factor. Look, I like to be right.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't we all?
It's ego. Yeah, so it's ego. So, the ego is what has encompassed, if I look back at my life, right, which, obviously we do through our fourth step, it's just ego. Really, like, to the degree that I can destroy it and keep humility. And, what do they say? The AA or GA are the only places where you come in a big shot and graduate to servant.
Yeah.
So if I could stay in that servitude mentality, I live a great life. If I could stay outside of my own self, things are great. It's when I get consumed with me, things aren't great. So I don't look back at my childhood and say like, oh, I had a terrible childhood, but I also had parents that were hands off, right? So I went to UNLV to college, and at 16 years old, I got on an airplane. I mean, by the way, this is 1987.
Yeah.
1987. At 16 years old, me and my best friend, who was also a gambler at the time, he doesn't really gamble anymore, but not an addict, right? Just a problem gambler, but stopped. Went cold turkey, just stopped. He doesn't have the isms like I have. We got on a plane and went to Las Vegas and spent 10 days in Vegas, me and him. We stayed with his brother who was out there. It's like, what parents let their 16-year-old kid go to Vegas, fly to Vegas for 10 days?
Yeah. It's pretty insane.
I took $1,000 of money that I had earned through hard work. I lost 900 inside of 6 hours, and I was in Vegas.
What?
And had to exist on $100 for 9 straight days.
Because that was going to be my question. What was your first experience realizing you might have a problem, or where gambling actually scared you? And was that your first real?
I knew I had a problem right away. I knew I had a problem when I was 14, 15 years old. I knew that something wasn't right about me. And, I used to hear from my dad, why can't you bet $2 like me? Or why can't this just be enough? And it was never enough. Like, it was insatiable. Like, I just had to be around it. I had to bet more. I always had the idea for more, and more. Look, everybody's different, but I mostly believe that when you're in your own head and your head hits the pillow at night, most people know they have a problem. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I looked myself in the mirror and I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this to yourself? Like, you can't stop, and you can't. Like, I would say that, or I'd be driving to the casino and I'd be like, what? Like, turn the car around. Like, this is going to end the wrong way. Like, nothing here is good for you. Like, I'm having these out loud conversations with Ryan. Like normal people can't even comprehend it.
Yeah, I get it. That's like me driving to the liquor store when I'm like no, I shouldn't be doing this. Turn around, turn around, turn around. But it's like your body's taking over and it's just walking in for you, and your mind doesn't want to. So it's pretty
Yeah.
frightening.
So
But
the answer to that question is a very easy one, which is I knew the whole time.
yeah, yeah. But it was losing like $900 in a 6-hour period. Was that your first like real loss experience?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I remember that feeling really well. It wasn't even really the loss. It was more like, how am I going to survive?
Yeah.
Like, because I might not be able to stay in action. So it didn't even really have anything to do with the amount, even though I was young and it was a lot of money. It was more like I like for gamblers, it's you have bullets. Got how many bullets? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, if I can't, if I can't, if I don't have money, I can't place bets. And if I can't place bets and I'm in Las Vegas, like,
Yeah.
what? How do
Yeah.
you? How could you exist?
Exactly. It's but there are many moments throughout your gambling career where you got to down to like, close to zero and then you used whatever else you had and kept gambling it, or did you wait until you worked hard, earned the money before gambling again, or was it completely out of control where you were borrowing money and stuff like that or asking for favors?
I always had 2 or 3 jobs.
Okay.
I always had a way to access at least some cash. I generally worked tip jobs so it could replenish overnight. And then somehow, some way, and anybody who listens to the show who's a gambler will understand exactly what I'm going to say. And you may too, as an alcoholic. I could always figure out how to put nickels and dimes together to be able to get myself in even the smallest amount of action to quelch the desire when I needed it.
Yeah. No, that's good to know. So I've interviewed, I think, 2 other people with past in gambling, and yeah, it's pretty much they always find a way. But I know one of the people I interviewed, went into debt, took out a bunch of payday loans and stuff like that, and things like that that just made it worse, obviously, because once you start paying back those payday loans, the interest is ridiculous. So there's so many different ways that people try to get the money and access to the money in times of desperation.
Well, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I had that as well.
Yeah.
That goes to zero too, right? So
Yeah.
it's like you max that out and you
Yeah.
max all your forces out, and then you still have to find a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't ever I never robbed a store or committed a um felonious act to stay in action. But had I continued down the path that I was on, it was just a
Possible.
potential. I mean, likely out. Sure. What,
Yeah.
like, why wouldn't it have been? Why wouldn't it have been? But again, like when I stopped, I was so done.
Yeah.
Like, I was just so done. I was so ready and so tired of the chase. Yeah. I didn't have I didn't have years left in me. It was the end one way or another.
Okay. Let's discuss a little bit about being at UNLV at 18, and then one of your first main careers was working in the radio.
Yeah, that's right. I was
Okay.
an on-air talk show host at WIP.
Okay, and that's in Philadelphia. Okay, okay. Awesome. And then can you tell me a little bit about how that led to doing like an invitational hosted by Jim Furyk, how you got into like the PGA thing and all that?
Yeah, I mean, it all has to center around recovery, right? So what happened is I was working as an on-air talk show host at WIP. Imagine, as a talk show host, you're giving your opinion on sports. So when the time came that I was ready to commit to recovery or to go to GA meetings, I was going to GA meetings, but I was also on the air. So here I am on the air and I'm talking about games. Well, it's hard to be talking about games when you're trying to be in recovery. So I made the decision that I was going to have to essentially leave the radio business because I could no longer really give my opinion on sports and safety.
Yeah.
Left the radio business and was in recovery and needed a recovery job. And a recovery job is pretty mindless, eats a lot of hours, and you can make a little bit of money because obviously I was in a tremendous amount of debt at that point. So I got a job at a golf course in the outside services department. Now here I am, 24 years old, college graduate, was just on air at the number one station in Philadelphia or in the CBS Sports family 4 or 5 days a week. Didn't have money, but I had some recognition, access to every locker room, Flyers, Sixers, Phillies, interview players, etc. as a young guy. And the next day I'm in somebody's trunk pulling their clubs out of their car, putting it on the back of a golf cart and changing their hard spikes to soft spikes at a golf course in complete anonymity because nobody knows who I am. So it was very humbling. I made a lot of tips and I played a lot of golf and my head got really clear. And when my head got really clear, I had came up with business ideas that I presented to the management of the golf course. They liked me, obviously. I was a super hard worker, I always have been, right? One of our traits, by the way, like there's a commonality. Like
Yeah.
addicts aren't lazy. The opposite. It's hard to be an addict.
Very
Physically, it
determined
demands.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, but I talk about it all the time. And yeah, I had this idea and then just I chased it down by doing the only thing I didn't know what to do, but knew what to do, which is get on the phone and talk to people and cold call until I could make it happen. And that's really the genesis of it.
I got to ask, being a diehard Allen Iverson fan, did you ever get a chance to meet him during your days working with him?
You know what? Trying to think. No, I think Iverson was. I think I was pre-Iverson. I was like the Clarence Weatherspoon days
Oh,
covering the
okay.
Sixers.
Yeah, I remember him. Okay.
Yeah, but
I know
Iverson
all
had
about my
shown
sports
up.
facts. I didn't get to watch
Yeah,
him play, but I was born in '87, so I'm a little bit behind. But
yeah. You were born as I was traveling to Vegas. How about that?
jeez, no, it's time flies. I've been to Vegas like 30 times, so gambling was part of my problem, but it wasn't the end problem. I used to play a lot of blackjack and slot machines and stuff, but it never really, once I lost a certain amount of money, I was able to stop that for some reason. As far as drinking and drugs, though, it was a whole different story. I didn't know when to stop, but as far as money
Well,
goes,
you
I
knew
would
when to
freak out.
stop and couldn't stop.
Yeah, exactly. I knew when. Yeah, I just couldn't. But as far as gambling goes, once I got to a certain amount, I started to freak out a little bit. Once I started getting on the phone, calling grandma and being like, "Hey, can you buy me a plane ticket to get home?" I kind of blew through all my money, and then I was like, okay, I need to stop this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, I later learned in my life that the bodily reaction that, alcoholics have to booze, right? Which is like you have a few drinks and the party's on and you don't back off, you accelerate, was the exact same. Endorphins get released inside of my head when I was gambling and it,
And was it mostly sports gambling or like racetracks or stuff like that, or was it a lot of it cards and stuff? Like, what was your main form of gambling?
yes,
Yes to everything.
yes to everything.
Okay.
I love the horse. I love the horses because my dad took me around the horses. I love the horses, but there wasn't anything that I mean, the only form of gambling I'd say that I ever really didn't participate in was slot machines and scratch tickets.
Oh, okay.
Those people were always on a lower form of, I don't know if you understand this, but there was a hierarchy.
Yeah. Yeah. Like poker players and then racetracks. And then there's like
Oh yeah,
the
right. So
average
I was
Joes that
smart.
buy scratch tickets.
Yes, I was smart. Don't you understand how intellectual I was? I was
Yeah.
on the. I was the elite. I was in the thinking person's
You were
games.
like Rain Man coming into there.
Yes, the games I played, you had to think through. You had to be smart to play. You couldn't just crack. Yes, I was in the like. It's funny. It's like the dumbest guys in the rooms are always the happiest, right?
Yeah. That's funny.
And why is that? There's a correlation between, I try and that it's humility. I try to stay dumb and curious, and to the degree that I do, my life's been.
Yeah. Let's see. So were people in your life, like your family, friends, I don't know what relationships you're in at the time, but a lot of them, were they noticing a lot of what your issues were? Or were you pretty good at keeping it to yourself?
Yeah, look, it weird. It so my dad didn't really want to deal because he had his own stuff that he had going on, and you could just manipulate people like your parents so easily. For me, I just manipulated them. My girlfriend, this is the end. My girlfriend at the time, I mean, my reputation was, of course, that way. But my girlfriend at the time, she basically said to me, she's like, listen, this isn't the life I want. It's a life you're going to be in, and I'm not going to be in it with you. And it was, people say you don't get sober for other people, and I don't agree with that. Because when my girlfriend at the time gave me that ultimatum, I was already done. I just needed a reason to be done, and she gave me the reason to be done. Yeah, 30 years together, 28 years married, 3 kids. I'd say everything worked out for the best. So people knew, and I thought I could hide it. I didn't. And, before she came along, I manipulated everybody else so it wasn't an issue. The thing about being an addict, and you know this, like today I deal with life every day, sometimes every moment of every day. And like you feel it and they feel the pain and you feel the suffering of like things that just happen in a normal day. Like I'm very sensitive like that. And when I'm in addiction, you never really dealt with it. You just drown it out by whatever means necessary. And then eventually everything hits the fan and you deal with it then. So I always say, like, now life's actually, in many ways, a little more difficult to navigate because I'm dealing with things on a day and moment to moment basis. So I'm feeling things. Whereas before I would only really have to deal with life on like every six weeks or so when things would blow up. And then you'd have to repair and then deal with it again in 6 weeks and then have to repair and deal with it again in 6 weeks. My wife used to, it's funny, even early in my recovery, like she'd have to ask me to do the same thing 5-6 times. And I'd be like, why is she always nagging at me to do this? Do it,
Yeah.
And then
Procrastination.
finally it clicked. It's like, well, if you did it, she probably would only ask you once.
Yeah.
So I don't think my story is unique. Did I hide it? Sure. Did people know? Sure. But people don't want to really confront. They don't know what to, like, normal people don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. They think they're helping you. They're actually hurting you. Like, you take their help and use it against them. Like, it's just like everything about an addict sucks.
Yeah.
And sucks for the addict and sucks the life out of the people around them. And it's completely counterintuitive. Like, I have someone in my life that's using and I want to help them. Okay, well, how do you help them? Well, throw them out of the house. What? Where are they going to sleep? Well, on the street. Well, how's that going to help them? I mean, so it's just very draining and very difficult to be adjacent to us. And I have the utmost of sympathy because they're not coming at it with any knowledge. Like, we've got experience and we can understand what to do.
Yeah.
But like a normal person, like I don't even know how they think.
I know. I've always wanted to be a normie. I envy those people, but it just doesn't work like that. So can you take me into, I want to know like how overcome, being in recovery from gambling and all, and then going through like your first, I guess you'd consider your first major setback or failure in business back in 2006. It looks like you finally, you spent 3 years kind of building up the luxury villa rental company. So how did that go? How did you cope with all that and what happened?
I mean, it was, so first off, that was 2008 was the financial crisis. And I reflect on that period of time as not being good enough to navigate that business through the financial crisis and being stubborn to thinking that the business idea that I had, Ryan, was the right business idea. And instead of pivoting the business to something that was more malleable and able to exist long term, I stayed the course. And by staying the course, that meant we had to shut down. That was very hard on me in that I had not really experienced failure in 10 years, 11 years. And then all of a sudden I was faced with it. So I just started to self-medicate, not a ton, but a little more and a little more. And then I picked up work. So then, I started to run a golf course for a buddy of mine and kind of got my head clear over the summer. And then he had a dispute with his business partner and I got fired out of the blue one day because his business partner took it over and hated him so much that he wanted to get rid of me, even though I was doing a great job because I was an extension of him. So, then I started to use a little more, right? And from there got a great opportunity to build another business in the villa rental world on the island of St. Bart's. And because I was in a defeated mentality and point in my life, didn't secure an agreement when I started with the company I was with to protect me based on promises that were made when I took the role, and ended up having a great amount of success, but not capitalizing on that success financially
No.
as much as I should have. And so now I, accelerate here. I'd spent now 5 years of like treading water. And that's when I got back with, that's when I got my, um, former partner from Marquis Jet. And he had a business idea that he asked me to come help run for him. And a few years into it, it was just time to make a decision. Like, I wasn't gambling and I just wasn't going forward. And so I just said, like, what is it that I need to do to go forward? And what I needed to do was recommit myself to my recovery. And what for me that meant was the elimination of alcohol, drugs, getting physical, good shape. So I went on a diet and worked out. And as opposed to going to GA, I went to AA. And the reason that is important is because so GA works out of a yellow book called the Combo Book, and it's based on the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's not the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So for me, I needed to be in the big book and not work the steps, but live the steps, work and live the steps, get a sponsor, and really prescribe to how it was laid out in the 164 pages that I'm sure you and I both know. So that was a seminal moment for me because I had a long time in recovery, but I had never really abandoned self. And because I hadn't abandoned self, and turned my will and power over to, a higher power, I kept coming back to me being the center of the universe. And that just kept tripping me up and tripping me up. So, here we are now. 10 years later, I haven't had a drink, drug, mind-altering substance, avoid surfing the internet too long, don't get consumed by social media, don't have any issues with shopping or porn. Any of the things that we as addicts can overconsume to kind of alleviate and numb dealing with what's in front of us.
So true.
And there's zero coincidence with the fact that when I got to that point and made that decision, really a year earlier, but, really 14, 15, like the end of 14, really. I kind of stayed in that slop for a couple more years of just sort of like trying to do it on my own. But yeah, that's when it accelerated. I don't know if that answers the question
Oh, it
directly.
does. It does. I was curious about what you meant when you said you were self-medicating during those difficult years. Were you referring to drinking or gambling more, or just
No,
dealing with your...
I haven't made a bet since March 6, 1997.
Okay, so were you talking about like drinking?
Yeah, I mean, drinking, drinking and drugs, I think were a component in my life. It wasn't gambling for me. Gambling was still different, but it wasn't helping me. So it was like, I'm an alcoholic because I have the isms, right? The anger, the fear, the resentment, all of it exists inside of me. There's no question in my mind I suffer from alcoholism. And I don't need to have, I don't need to have one. I'm a guy who needs to have none. So that's just the way that, that's what I'm talking about by self-medicating.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. So yeah, just being an alcoholic and addict myself, sometimes when I'm referring to self-medicating, I'm not even talking about just medications or alcohol or drugs. Sometimes it's like just some kind of escape, like...
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like even serial dating was like one of my self-medicatings, So
Yeah. Well, I'm not there, thankfully. I remember, and I don't know what year it was, and I don't know when it happened, but I remember I would go to the doctor over time and you'd get prescribed Oxy, right? And I never did pills. That wasn't my deal. But all of a sudden, I'm like in the house and I like scrape together like a bottle and a half of Oxy of just stuff that's right. And like, I want to say 2 weeks later, there's no oxy.
Yeah. Yeah. So addict
And I'm like,
behavior, just kind of, but more nonchalant.
right. But I'm like, I was like, what am I like? I'm not a pill guy. Like, I'm not a heroin shoot. Like, that's not who I am. And it's not who I want to be. Like, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, so, and that scared the hell out of me because they don't smell. You can put them in your top pocket. Like, so I got really scared. And, I've always, fear, obviously, I'm an addict, but like things like that, where I would, when I talk about self medicating, it's like, oh, let me try, like there's a guy who comes to my home group that talks about Kratom. I never heard of it.
Never tried it
And then,
either.
and then, but I don't, by the way, I don't need to. Like, I don't, oh, maybe I can, or like there's a new pill that they're advertising online or on TV. And I'm like, you can have all that stuff. Like, my issue is not substances. Substances were my solution to my issues. My issue is too much me on me, ego, like out the roof. And to the degree that I can deal with that, I know how to deal with it. Go to meetings, help others, continue to help at the homeless shelters and detoxes that I do, put my hand out to men who need assistance and guidance, and be a person who continues to stack days to show them that they can too. Like, so that's how my life gets better, not through taking a pill or think, about an alternative to get out of my current situation. Like, you realize no matter what your troubles are today, if you add a substance to it, they're still going to be there tomorrow, except now you're recounting your days. Like, what?
Yeah. It's a good way of looking at it, especially I want to hear more about what you are doing to helping out homeless shelters and stuff like that too. But can you take me a little bit into how everything started with Inked, since that's what you're doing right now, it sounds like?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we started as a retail store. It was a pivot from a previous idea where I had learned how to screen print and embroider on fitness equipment. We didn't have the velocity in fitness equipment from a sales perspective that I wanted. So I pivoted to things people bought, which is like t-shirts and hoodies and hats, and became a promotional marketing firm, product decorator, and, really corporate partner for companies to wear branded gear. And so we started in 2015, and then COVID hit, closed our retail down, and moved completely to a service-based model and online on-demand company, merchant swag stores. And I love the business. It allows me a great creative outlet. I get to work with young people who are smart, driven, creative. It's just a perfect industry for them, and real people.
Yeah.
Not to say that the luxury world doesn't have real people. It does.
Yeah.
But, think about the luxury world. I glanced over it earlier, and I had small kids. I'm in $6,000 Enya suit and eating at the best restaurants all over the country with corporate tycoons and leaders and celebrities, flying home on Friday, and your wife hands you a small kid. You're like, what are we doing? Right.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm just dealing with like everyday people, and some of them are super crazy successful CEOs, but generally speaking, on the merch side, they're not getting into that. It's been great to work inside of a space that allows me to have that outlet of creativity, because I do think a lot of addicts are also very creative. So yeah.
Yeah. And you guys have worked with some larger companies, like Crocs was one of them, notably, and a couple other big ones that you're talking about. What other companies are you talking about?
Well, one that you'll enjoy is one of our clients is Underdog, which is a predictions market. So my wife and I joke that the irony of my life is we're going to make more money off of a gambling company than I lost gambling,
That's crazy.
which
The
is kind
irony.
of fun. The irony.
Yeah.
But yeah, listen, we got a lot of top tier clients, and I'm very grateful for each one of them.
That's awesome. Okay. So, and you've been doing that since 2015 until now?
Yeah.
Okay.
2015, 2015 until forever.
Till forever. Awesome. Awesome. What are your goals for the company from here on out then, considering that it's becoming successful, it's becoming a great online swag market, but like how do you want to build on top of that?
I try to keep it very focused on the day. I mean, obviously I've got annual goals and I've got growth goals, but we do have a number of employees here and long-term employees. People have been with me a long time. So I feel extremely responsible for not only their paycheck, but that paycheck that goes to their family and their health insurance. Yeah, I work really hard to make sure that we continue to be successful. But yeah, my goals are to look, I'm not, we're going to be 100 million or bust. We're not there yet. I mean, listen, we're close to an 8-figure company and, to go to zero to 8 figures. I mean,
That's huge.
yeah, it's easy to look at the internet and think that everybody does it because you see who cashes out for 40 million and 50 million and 100 million and who raised 100 million. And it's like, you get caught up in that comparison game and it's just a loser's track. And, I'm very proud of what we've built and I certainly haven't done it alone. And yeah, the goal is to just kind of do the next right thing. And if we do that, we'll get to where we want to be.
Awesome. Awesome. So, what's like your strategy? Like, you have salespeople that reach out to companies specifically, or do they generally come to you for your services, or how does that work growing your business?
At this stage in our business, we have a lot of clients. So we also, we get a lot of referrals because of that. And then our key marketing channel is me on social media, which has been exceptional. And we also send a lot of cold emails.
Social media is everything. Social media, definitely, just like starting off this podcast a little less than a year ago, social media has been my way of really getting the name out there and getting subscribers on Spotify and YouTube and stuff like that. So it's a great way to do it, and a great way to have interpersonal relationships with people too. So,
Well, my number one strategy on social media, though, is to be authentic.
yeah,
Like I write 100% of my posts
good.
that you see on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
I'm not relying on AI, looking to become a thought leader per se. I'm sharing with you my life in the moment as it's happening, and it's straight from my fingers. I do a lot of clips, so I'm sure there'll be some clips that come from our conversation, and
Awesome.
yeah, you just hope that somebody gets something out of it, and
Yeah.
it aids them in some way, and I've added value in a way that they perhaps didn't previously have.
Good. Appreciate it. So, does any of your business are the people well aware about your history and recovery from gambling and all that? Do you ever incorporate that into your business and how you promote it, market it to people that you are recovering? Or is that just kind of separated?
I don't hide from it, but I mean, I also don't lead with it.
Yeah.
I mean, we work in a lot of, I work for alcohol companies. I work for cannabis companies. I work for gambling companies. I work for
Yeah.
gaming or whatever. Like, so I don't, I'm agnostic towards it all.
Yeah.
Like there's a big vote coming up in Massachusetts on repealing legalization of cannabis. And one of my clients is putting out a ton of content. And I retweeted some of his content and reposted some of his content because it's an issue that's important to him and he's a good guy. And, I take a tact of just because I can't do something doesn't mean somebody else can't. So I'm not anti-gambling. I'm not anti-drugs. I'm not anti-alcohol. I'm not anti-anything. I'm just anti all of it for me. Like my life's not better, but it has nothing to do with other people. If other people, I mean, here's a secret, Ryan. Some people use things in safety. Like what?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Exactly.
Right? They do. Like, there's something I know someone, I'll say it like that, who has a chocolate bar, one square. I've never seen the cannabis chocolate bars physically. I've never seen one. Okay. But I'm assuming it's like a Hershey bar that has the squares. And he has one square every night to help him go to sleep. How do you do that?
Yeah. It just feels like it's a necessity at that point, or you're reliant on it.
Well, whether he is or isn't, I couldn't do one square.
Yeah. I know. I'd
I,
be like, all
I'm
right,
like
let me have 8
square,
squares.
out the whole candy bar is the square. That I
Yeah.
could do.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
nuts.
It's like, how do you have any, yeah. I had no way of just having one drink, I would have to have 8, that's how I would be with anything, even sweets these days. I have trouble. It's like, if I get an ice cream, I'm getting 3 scoops, not just one. So, it's just,
Sugar is I got to tell you, sugar.
yeah. Um, So a couple final questions. Can you go elaborate more into what things you're doing for the community outside of your business? Like you talked about something in volunteering for homeless shelters. What else are you doing on top of that? How'd you get into that?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I try to serve breakfast one day a week at either or both of the Pine Street Inn up in Boston or the Amos House in Providence, Rhode Island. And then in addition to that, I take a commitment on a monthly basis into the Gavin Foundation, which is both a detox. The detox is where I go, but also sober living in Boston. And then I'm active around my own community. There's a men's sober house, which has 400 plus residents about 4 miles from my house. And I'm active in meeting and taking meetings into that space as well, in addition to the meetings that I go to on the side. So then I'm very fortunate in my business that I'm able to donate apparel to specific, like a lot of times men walk into with nothing. So we're able to donate that way. And then, I don't say no to many people. So I know a lot of homelessness and recovery are causes I support. So when people reach out to me and they ask for help, I get.
Good. That is awesome. How often are you going to meetings, would you say? Like, is it a pretty common part of your
uh,
life, daily part of your
three,
life?
3 to 4 days a week.
It's awesome. Okay. And then, like, is this GA work just the same? Like, you can sponsor people and all that, and sponsees, and it's all pretty much
Yeah,
similar.
it does. I don't really go to GA any longer. I'm on the 1-800 hotline. So if you dial 1-800 gambler, you have an opportunity. You may get me.
Okay.
But I'm on that. It's not another service area that I guess I didn't mention, but I mainly focus my recovery on AA because there's just so many more meetings and there's so much more highly attended. And though we have a singleness of purpose, I generally will identify myself as both a compulsive gambler and alcoholic.
Okay. Have you, in your almost 30 years of recovery from gambling, have you had any moments where you thought about giving in, you came close, and you had to stop yourself? And how did you do that? Not one? Okay. Seems like you're the type of guy who, once you put your mind to something, you stick to it.
Yes. Yes.
So, what advice for my listeners out there? Final question: what advice would you give to people out there struggling not only with gambling addiction, drug and alcohol addiction? What advice would you give from your experience, and even people that want to get motivated to start their own business and grow from there and stay persistent and consistent and all that? What advice would you give from your life experience?
Yeah, look, it's funny because I actually wrote a LinkedIn post about this for tomorrow. It's take action. You got to take action against your own experience, whether that's, look, the thinking is I'm so deep that I can't get out of this hole. And I'm sure you've heard this said before, but the first thing you do when you're in a hole, you know what it is?
Try to dig out.
Stop digging.
Stop digging. Yeah, it's kind of like my show called Rock Bottom with Ryan. It's like, yeah, you just keep digging to a lower rock bottom.
You just keep digging. So the way you stop digging is you take action against your own recovery. So how do you take action against your own recovery? Do the things that you likely most don't want to do. Before you walked into an AA meeting, for example, Ryan, right? You had all these, how the AA meeting was before you walked in, right?
Yeah. So
yeah, you don't know anything.
Yeah,
of course. That's my point. Is right. It's like we're so in our heads, right, about anything that we want to do, right? How many times you have conversations, like 1,000 conversations in your head about a conversation that you have to have, and when you have that conversation once, it's not anything like the 1,000 you had in your head.
Yeah, so true.
Don't have the 1,000 conversations in your head. Just take action. You want to start a business? Sell something. You want to, you think you need to build a website? Go to GoDaddy and buy the website and build it. Like, do it. Like, actually Nike's slogan, "Just do it," is the most brilliant slogan of all time for a reason. Take action. Whatever it is, take action. And if you don't take action, like, you can't, nobody can help you. You have to start. You have to start. And generally starting is by like doing something that you don't want to do. And newsflash, you don't need to be motivated to do anything. You just need to do it. Like, I can't tell you how many times I'm sitting at home. It's 7:00. Meeting starts at 7:30. I'm in New England. It's freaking cold. I don't want to leave my house, which is warm. And I'm like, if I get up off this chair, I will go. Yeah. So you got to get up. Get up.
Take action.
Get up.
Love it.
Because if
very
you
straightforward.
don't get up, the next thing you know, you'll look at your phone. It'll be 7:45, and you just missed a meeting.
Yep, that's so true. So true. And that's still one of my things I'm working on in my recovery. 18 months sober, almost 19 months next week, and like my biggest thing is like procrastinating the obvious things that I could be doing. And I look back at my day and I'm like, wow, I could have easily done that in 5 minutes. And I'm like, well, of course I justify it. I'm like, well, I didn't drink today. I went to a meeting today, but there's still about 20 things I could have done to feel more accomplished, to get towards my goals, to keep going. So I still got to remind myself that now. Still early in my recovery, so to take action.
And the truth is that it's like, it's okay that what you did that day was enough. Like, you don't have to beat yourself up over past regrets in the moment. It's okay to not live a perfect day. But look, like, we're only as sick as our secrets. We're only as recovered as our action, right? Like, what do they say? Recovery's in the feet. So just take action, keep moving. When you don't take the action that you want to take, be easy on yourself. Lord knows you were hard on yourself for many years already, and just make a different decision next time. And past decisions don't have to be the future ones. So that's my advice.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I think your story is extremely inspirational, and the fact that not even just overcoming gambling, almost 30 years ago, but overcoming just like the ups and downs of starting a business and it failing and then coming back and making something out of it, and using it to motivate you as opposed to letting it break you. So I think that's huge for anybody in recovery to hear that.
I overcame the feeling of invincibility.
Yep. And I do love how you admit that your ego and like your, facing yourself was the most difficult thing to overcome throughout your recovery. That's what it sounded like.
What else? No, I'm saying what else?
Yeah.
No, I'm saying I don't even know. Like, I can't associate. I mean, I look for opportunities to identify.
Yeah.
Like, for me, that's what it was. That's what my biggest challenge was. It was like, I was either going to look inside myself and look at myself and say, like, this is the truth about you. And this is what you've become because you're so convinced that you're so good, or I was going to just go away. I am not ready to go away.
Yeah. Well said. Well, thank you so much, Jay, for being on and sharing your story. It really means a lot.
Ryan, I appreciate it.
Rock Bottom with Ryan. No bullshit, just recovery.